Hi, I'm Rick Belden, and this is Masculinity from the Inside Out, an exploration of the inner lives of men. If you find this content valuable, please like, share, and ring the bell for notifications. Thank you.
So you mentioned kind of like cultivating a deeper understanding of that and maybe yourself in whole through art expression, and that's definitely true for me. That's definitely been a way that I can reconnect to myself, and I know that art therapy is something that's like really deeply studied now. Um, and I guess I would also probably consider, your books as part of that similar work too. So can you talk a little bit about how like creative expression, whether it be writing, painting, drawing, uh, whatever art medium you use, how does that kind of, what relationship does that have to this entire discussion in terms of like reconnecting to younger parts of yourself, ideal parts of yourself, things like that?
Well, several aspects to this. For me, there's one sort of personal aspect that comes to mind, which is that I was constantly doing art as a child, constantly, and everybody around me is like, "Oh, you're a great artist," and all this stuff. And so when I got into, I don't know, sixth or seventh grade, um, I did this big watercolor of a hockey player, and there was some kind of regional competition. And so our school entered, the school basically chose, oh, these are our representatives in this competition. And so I think I came in, it was like a watercolor category, whatever the categories was for my age range. And it was like multiple schools. And my watercolor came in second. And I was just devastated because I expected to be first with everything. And I quit. I just quit art. It's just like, well, if I'm not going to be first, then there's no point in doing this. And so
Mhm.
that's another point at which I split off, and I ceased my development in that way. So I think one of the things that bringing in the aspect of creative expression can do, one thing, is that it allows you the opportunity to reconnect with yourself at the point where maybe you didn't continue to develop around creative
Oh yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
Uh, a
Yeah.
lot of people are shut down in terms of creative expression in their preteens, like we talked about last time, the preteens,
Mhm.
you make decisions. So another aspect of my decision about art was like, well, the art kids were kind of weird, and they seemed weird to me, and they were often perceived as weird. And I felt like I'm already perceived as weird. I don't need another layer of weird on top of my persona. And so I'm just going to stay away from this art thing. And so this is something I work with clients all the time. It's like one of the two fundamental things that I want to help clients do is like, how can we bring your creative process online with whatever it is that we're working on? Because that creative energy it's so elemental, it's so primal, it's so big in all of us, regardless of how it comes out. So for some people like my father, he had a ton of creative energy. He was constantly building things. He was constantly uh, he was a welder. He was constantly fabricating trailers and building houses and building dog houses and all this stuff. And so I don't have any sort of strict idea about how it should look. Um, some people have actually developed their creative expression in ways that are nicely refined. A lot of people haven't. So a lot of the time I'll ask a client, okay, between now and next time, draw a picture of what it was like to be around your mom when you were a kid. And they'll say, if I do that, it'll look like a 6-year-old did it. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Because one of the things that you can do with art, creative expression, whatever, is with visual stuff, is you can bypass the verbal filters that prevent you from saying things that you think shouldn't be said. You don't know that you have them. But if you do a drawing, things will come out that are useful in terms of insights that you don't intend to show. And so that's one of the good aspects of it. Another good aspect of it is that we want to connect with that 6 or 7 year old. We want to give that that 10-year-old an opportunity to express himself. And children often express themselves in a native fashion through doing art. And so it's kind of a 2-for-1. You get additional information that's kind of coming from your unconscious that wouldn't come out if you were talking. And you also take another step toward opening the communication channel with your younger self. Now, in my case, I'm highly verbal. So yeah, I wrote a lot. I journal a lot. I wrote 3 poetry books. And so that's another way to do it. One of the nice things about poetry is it doesn't bypass your verbal filters in the way that drawing does, but it bypasses a lot of them because you move out of sort of a linear narrative mode into more of a metaphorical impressionistic mode. And it's a different way of thinking. And so it allows things to come out that wouldn't come out if you wrote a 500-word story.
So it's a great like to do this artistic work, artistic work to allow yourself to express your artistic nature, your creativity, in combination kind of with some of the other inner work that we've been talking about throughout this series. It can allow more than what your conscious mind is so set on deciphering and meaning making out of. It can loosen that up and allow like some of your deeper subconscious feelings and truths to really filter.
And they will make the meaning for you. They will make the meaning apparent if you give them the space to do it.
That's really interesting, right?
Right. So we like to top down things,
Right.
and all of this, everything we're talking about today, you need your executive function engaged so that you can format things in a way that you can actually make use of. You can kind of work through, but the information is complete and coherent on its own as it arises. It just comes up in language that isn't necessarily, we're not very fluent in it. But it has its own value, it has its own meaning. And just to kind of close the loop on one part of this discussion, another thing I dropped that I was into in like later on, sort of in high school, like sophomore, junior, is I did this big poetry project for an English class, and it had art. I made art for some of the poems, and there were photographs in there, little Polaroids and stuff like that. And I hadn't been able to connect with that in a long time. And then when the Iron Man dream started coming and other dreams started coming, I felt overwhelmed with information. I was writing these long narratives in my journal every morning. It's like all the details and all this stuff. And I got this idea that like, well, what if I wrote this dream down as a poem? I could get what matters and I could do it more efficiently. And what I found was it was actually in some ways a better representation of the thing.
Oh, okay. This is really good. You made a point right there about like it comes into you better or different whenever you do it creatively versus writing it or even talking about it. That resonates really, really, really deeply with me because I feel like a lot of the emotions, I journal often, sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours a day if I have the time. And I find a lot of times that if I'm too caught up in being overly analytical, then it disconnects me from the intimacy that the journaling was meant for in the first place. You're talking about like using different neural pathways and really kind of allowing the analytical mind to just sit in the background while you go in a different way about kind of sitting with these feelings. And I think that's really, I mean, that speaks to me a lot in terms of like, maybe don't write it paragraph by paragraph in a journal, maybe write a poem, or maybe draw a picture, or maybe paint a picture, or whatever you're on, glass blow, sculpt, or whatever, you know, like whatever your vibe is for the art. But there's ways that this is going to come into you that even like talking about it with a friend or a coach or to yourself through journaling won't do.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think you expressed that really well about actually accessing those different neural pathways, because part of what we're talking about, and again, it's funny, it's like so many themes and different visits are coming up today. You know, we talked last time about that whole thing of am I trying to heal my broken self, or am I developing and evolving myself? And
Hmm.
so when you talk about accessing those different neural pathways, we're talking about uh, development here.
Hmm.
We're not talking about fixing anything.
Hmm.
We're talking about development of inner resources that you have available to you that you're not using right now. And so when you take those other modes of expression, not only are you connecting with earlier aspects of yourself that just did that in a very relaxed native way, but you're addressing the fact that there's more capacity there that you can
Yeah.
develop.
Yeah. Which is exactly how over time the paradigm that many of people may come to you, for example, for like coaching services for, that paradigm can shift from I, I'm broken, I need to heal, I need to fix myself, into I'm never finished. I'm never finished, constantly in evolute. And it becomes, the paradigm shifts into, you look forward to the ways that you can kind of experience this like
Mm-hmm.
expansion, or experience kind of like uh, uh, a a new thought, or a new perspective, or a detachment from a part of your identity that you were so attached to. I've experienced this, man, where like at first it hurts and it feels like punishment and feels like, man, I'm just doing the wrong shit in life, and I'm guilty, I'm shameful. Then it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm healing, I'm getting better. And then you're like looking for this state of like when you're gonna be healed and good enough. And then you really realize that like it's a new way of being. It's never ending. And you're like moving into the unknown, kind of constantly becoming more, or becoming
Yeah.
less. Whatever, you know what I'm saying? Becoming different, becoming new. And I think
Yeah.
then it just becomes the practice
Right.
itself.
And one of the great things that I like about doing this kind of creative expression as part of your process is that, well, a couple of things. Number one, we've talked about externalization before. So what you do when you, like when I wrote those poems, or when I made those collages or whatever, I actually took a bunch of internal information that was not really coherent, and I expressed it externally in a way that encapsulated it and actually formatted it in a way that, like, oh, this makes sense to me now. I can look at this. And so I created an artifact. And one of the nice things about the creation of those artifacts is you can look back at it 20 years later and everything just comes right back to you. And you can see, you again, you can, I can connect with who I was 30 years ago when I look at that stuff. And it feels good to be able to do that, to be able to remind myself, look where I was, look what I did, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just think there are probably even lots more benefits to everything that we're talking about today. We're talking about personal mythology, we're talking about dreams, we're talking about creative expression, whether it's art or poetry or all the things you mentioned, or even for a lot of men, it's just building something, creating something. It doesn't, you know, I'm kind of an artistic type. You are too. Not every man is like that. You know, for some men, it might be that the way that they externalize and make something, make an internal state or struggle or change apparent is they actually build a chicken house. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be something that people think of as art.
Well,
That chicken house is
I mean,
that's an externalization too.
right. Well, I for one would still, I would create that. I would, excuse me, I would call that art as well too.
Mhm.
I've called anything
Absolutely.
that you bring into manifest form art. Like I think mechanics, or you know, body guys who do body work on cars. I mean, they're amazing artists. It's just whatever your medium is. If you don't want to accept yet that all human beings are creative, if you feel like, oh, I'm just not creative at all, okay, that's fine. Think about what even exercising, flexing some of those different pathways will do for you in your relationship, in your marriage, with your kids, how you can relate to them in a different way. When
Mm-hmm.
your thought patterns are switched up into, so you're seeing and feeling different frequencies, how will it make you in your job, whether you're, if you're in a position of leadership, or if you write and speak to people, how it will bring forth new ways of talking and interacting. So, I mean, it all works synergistically. It really
It
does.
does. And you made a great point too, which is that restoring that car or rebuilding that motorcycle engine, that can be a transformational experience for someone. It's just as legitimate as anything else we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've, you know, I've shared with you the artwork that I did last year whenever I was going
Yeah.
through a really acute time of transformation. And I mean, I've been painting for a few years now, and that work of art was well beyond anything I had done to that point. I mean, there was stitching in it, different mediums and all kind of stuff. And what I want to, the point that I want to make is that it served as a symbol for me,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's back at my mom's house in my childhood room closet. It's not something that I feel like I need to look at every day, like,
Right.
but whenever I go visit my mom back at home and I see it, I'm like, damn, that's pretty awesome.
So
That feeling you mentioned earlier.
yeah. So you have entrusted your valuable artifact with your child.
Yeah. Yeah. And also too, in another way, this happened in another instance. I man, I'm actually about to sell my Jeep, which is crazy. For a long time didn't think I would ever say that. But about there was another point in my life where I was going through a an internal transformation. And now that's always, I guess, but kind of whenever it was a really acute phase where I was having a lot of my identity kind of being, um, I was letting go of a lot of my ego identity and who I like was out here trying to act like I was in the world. And I learned how to paint a car, and I painted my car, not because like I'm some car person, but it was just a symbol.
Right.
And, a year or so later, now here I am ready to sell it. And it's so I just bring that up because if somebody listening to this is like, what the hell am I going to do with a chicken coop? It's not about that, it's not
Yes.
about that.
That,
It's
that
not
is
a
not my most elegant example.
right. I mean, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not a car guy. I
Right.
did that at the time I was doing that. I didn't know why I was doing it, which really shows something that, like, my actions were being influenced by a part of me, partly, that wasn't even conscious.
Right.
And I think being willing to take this route, even if you're like, I don't care about writing a poem. If part of you feels even the urge to do it, just do it, because that's a part of yourself that's beyond you.
Right. And there are ways that you can, if you feel like you have limitations, there are ways that you can work around those. So for me, I had all sorts of visual images coming to mind in terms of art. And I knew that I had not developed the skills to represent those things the way I wanted to. I was like, what do I do? Collages, just find something that looks close to
Mm-hmm.
what you're thinking about and just stick it on a piece of cardboard or whatever. I mean, just rudimentary expressions are okay. And
Yeah.
in some ways, they're actually better than okay because, again, it puts you back at that skill level that you had when you were younger. And when it would have been okay to just take the scissors and cut some stuff up and stick
Yeah.
it on a piece of paper and go, hey, look what I did.
Hmm. And yet, one more example of how all of this works together. This, what you're talking about right now, really points back to our first conversation, which was exploring perfectionism. And so, well,
Yes.
this, if for nothing else, is a practice within that. And just watch how your mind functions as you try to write the first couple lines in that first stanza of that poem, and you start to experience that self-judgment, that self-criticism. And then
That was a big, yeah,
and
that
then
was a
watch
big
what
deal for
happens
me.
as you watch what happens once you let that go and just let yourself
Right.
write whatever it is you're going to write. Whatever, it is what it is.
That was a big sort of thing that I had to confront too, because again, I got a degree in computer science. I was used to writing computer programs and software, and it was very easy to tell if they were correct, right? It's like, try to run this thing. Does it work? Do you get errors? Oh, there's no errors. It works. I remember telling somebody after I finished my first poetry book, like, man, I sure wish I could like run this like a piece of software and get results back to tell me if it's right or not. Because it's a whole different mindset.
Hmm.
It isn't. It's. I had to change um, my system of evaluating my work
Yeah.
because it had to be it had to be about, do I feel like I got it? Does this feel right to me? Does this sequence of poems feel like it works? It's all like feel. Now, of course, I could spell check it and do things like that, and look at the formatting and go, hey, is this lined up the right way? But there wasn't. I had become very used to having an external force of authority
Right.
that I could measure my work against that would tell me you're fine.
Hmm. I can totally relate. I mean, it's like, as a computer programmer or as an athlete,
Mm-hmm.
you know what correct and incorrect is. You know what points add up, or the programming has a language that works, or it
Right.
doesn't function, or you miss the shot or throw the interception or strike out, or whatever analogy you want to use. This exercise, there is no, you are the judge or not the
Yeah.
judge.
Right.
You are the
Right. It's not.
you are going to criticize it or not.
Right.
The analytical mind can't say this is right, this is wrong. The thinking brain can't say this is good, this is bad. um Exercises in art, you just feel it. You just feel it.
And so the shift for me is from that external force of authority that tells me you got it to an internal force of authority that says you got it.
A way of taking your power back, a way of realizing that you've given your power away. Yeah, man.
And you just never know when you put things out there. I mean, there are poems I've written that I just love. They're my favorites. I love them. And initially, I would share them with people, and they're like, "Yeah, you know." And then there'd be some other thing that I just kind of threw off. That's like, "Oh, that's all right." People are like, "Oh, that's fantastic," you
Mm-hmm.
know. So like, and so again, that's like if you're stuck on the external force of authority to tell you that you got it, then you're just going to be cast about like a boat in a storm. And that's another benefit of this process, not just with creating things or sharing things or whatever, but like, how do you operate in your life in a way where you feel confident and secure that you're meeting your own standards and you're embodying your own values, which
Yeah.
other people may not always resonate with. It,
Yeah.
they might 10 years from now, or they
Yeah.
might never.
And I think any great artist who's truly in tune with themselves understands that how the external world perceives it is none of your business, none of your responsibility. It doesn't hold the power. How did you feel while you were creating it is really what matters, which you don't have to be an artist to apply that to your life, because then you can say, whenever I give authentic care, affection, or even a compliment or something like that to a significant other, is their reaction something that needs to happen in a certain way for me to say, okay, giving that was worth it? Or are you giving it from the purity of your heart?
Yeah.
What's up? This is Chris Wilson. Thank you so much for checking out the content, and I hope you found value within it. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share, as it helps the channel grow and helps me continue my work of seeking deeper truths and sharing it with the world.